Like, I'll let you guys know, this came about after yesterday's sessions. I realized a lot of people like us do podcasts and have blogs and don't really understand why our stuff hits or doesn't hit. And over the past couple of years of doing this, I kind of started, I'm not saying this is perfect, and it's actually, I wanted to do a podcast to capture what we're all doing and generate something more than what I think, because what I'm doing works for me, but it might not work, and it might not make sense, and maybe someone here has more ideas that we can bring to the table. But I wanted to go through some of the stuff that I was doing and introduce it to you guys for those people who are curious about it. And again, my slideshows are really basic, because I hate I hate all that stuff. But anyways, this is a question. Why capture stats? Why even look at your blog? Why install Google Analytics or whatever? It's interesting, and it's good to validate your content and validate what you're doing. A lot of us have blogs or content that we generate, and we're not sure. Like, it might be really important to us. Like that new Lego podcast thing that, you've got that one thing you're really into, and you post about it, and you think it's cool, and then a couple months go by and you're like, well, was that really cool? Like, does anyone care? I don't get any they're talking about comments and stuff in this last session, and I'm like, no one commented, it didn't matter. And this is really looking at your stats is really useful in discovering the value of what you're doing. And in the beginning, when I started doing my show, I didn't know if it was valuable to anyone. In fact, for a long time, I was just doing it because it was something to do instead of going out and spending money. I would stay home, make music, do this thing, and it was my thing to do. So I thought that was really interesting. If you do nothing else from this session, if you do nothing else, there are two things you have to do. Two things. You have to put into Google, link, your blog URL. You have to do that. The reason why I do that, and I'm going to switch screens, I don't know how successful this will be, but I'm going to switch screens, and, that was that. Goofing around. So you have to do that because, is it this one? No. Is it this one? No. Is it? No, hold on. This. Okay, so I put in link, HTTP, blah, 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 alex7.ca. Google returns all the people who are linking to it, who've linked to my blog, just to the default URL. And down at the bottom, you can create an email alert, so anytime someone links to it, anytime anyone adds it to a blog, you can collect data. So this is really useful because as people who create content and have blogs and have podcasts and have stuff out there, you need to know where your stuff's showing up. Partially because it's good to know, and also if these people are doing things that you think are neat, you might want to contact them as another person and say, hey, listen, I've got content. Maybe we can do something and share content, share links, get to know each other, because they're just like you or us. We're all strangers on the net doing our thing, and we might not even know that we have common interests. And that's the key thing to do. The other thing, and I was using Brent. Let me go back up to that for a sec. So the other thing, when it comes up, is search for your podcast under artist title. And there are lots of different sites to do that. I'm going to show you one example of a site that you should look on. I'm going to use Brent, who's not here, the Closet Geek. So Brent's a nice guy, and he has his Closet Geek show. So I use Last.fm. I'm a big fan of Last.fm. I talk about it all the time on my blog. It's a music thing, like music site. So Brent tags all his shows as Brent the Closet Geek, right? So I go on to Last.fm, I search for Brent the Closet Geek, and I find out that he has 60 plays. But not only has 60 plays, in the last 6 months, down here, the Star Trek Generation thing, it got played once, and it's down 1 over the last 6 months before. And this other episode 62, is down 1, but it's been played once. And I'm going to show you mine. Now, I also have music online, but I'm a real big fan of this because, let me show you. So here's my show. Here's my shoe. So I have this show that I do. I tag them all Virgil Evans because it's me, but then I give them all this unique, this tag. So now I can see in the last 6 months, let's just scroll up a little bit here. So top tracks last 6 months, get that idea. So in the last 6 months, Hindsight, it was 2020 raves. It had three views, 3 listens in this environment. Not everybody uses Last.fm to capture their listening traffic, But of all the sites that do that kind of capturing what you listen to, Last.fm's #1. So in that community of people, 3 people listen to it. And that's actually up 2 people from the last 6 months before. And there are other sites. You can use ilike.com. You can use iLike, Last.fm. I can't remember the third one that I had in my head. Now it's gone. But there are sites out there. Last.fm's my favorite by far. And to also, as an example, podcast, is this it? So people tag stuff in there as podcasts. So here we have just some of the podcasts. So someone has gone and listened to podcasts and taken the time to, what I like about Last.fm, sorry, this is a side note, Last.fm is really good. People talk about monetizing their content online or valuizing their content online. There's 2 types of monetizing. There's money monetizing, like you pay me $10 for it, and then there's the metadata, the valuation of the content. This is good, you should listen to it too. People who've been listening to these podcasts have taken the time to go onto Last.fm and tag it as a podcast. So now we know that based on the Last.fm community, which is like a couple million people, that at least 60 people are listening to the Leo Laporte podcast and the NPR and the Onion. And we're starting to see that. And the more people who have podcasts who get into this kind of world, where there's, like the music scene on Last.fm is huge. We're talking like a little sliver of it, but if you get into it, you have an opportunity to really quickly profile yourself in there and develop maybe a new market. I'm always looking for new markets. I'm all about looking for new audiences. So if you do nothing else, if you just like get up and leave, law of 2 feet, at least do a Google search on people linking to your stuff, and at least go on something like Last.fm or any other music scrobbing, collecting site, and see if people are listening to your stuff. Because then you're starting to get an idea of what's out there. Yes?
One thing I would suggest, you mentioned tagging. When I first started my podcast, I would just go episode, name my podcast, episode, and leave it at that. What I started to do about 40 episodes in was instead of just going name my podcast episode number, I would name each episode.
Yeah.
I'd either come up with a nice little name tag, so it'd be my name, my podcast, episode, dot, and I tag each one, dash, with a name for the podcast. Try to sum up that episode in a word or two. Sometimes funny, sometimes kitschy, sometimes this is a review of this. Now, it was labor intensive. I did this at about the 60, 70 mark. I had about only 5 podcasts I'd done that to. I had to go back through a Libsyn page, edit every single one, and do that. Now that took a bit of time. But I found by doing that, it increased my download.
Yes.
Suddenly, instead of just being a number, they're labeled, and that seemed to increase in my back catalog to this day. Still gets downloads. I think it's because it's not just podcast number, and a cute little tag to name it.
And that's a real good point. When you open up one of my podcasts, and I'm only using my podcast as an example, similar thing, I put the title, whatever the title of it is, I put in the number for the podcast, dash, and the title of the podcast. So I know. Number 32, I actually have gone back and did that. For whatever reason, in my little system of systems, I forgot to do it, and it only comes up as number 32. It has no value to anyone. But this other stuff has value, and when people see it in these aggregator-type sites, they might look at it. They might take some time in it. So that was why. So if you do nothing else, you have to at least do that, because that's important. That's important. Now, and you're welcome to chime in and tell me other things that you guys do. But I'm just going to kind of rattle through what we're doing here. So there are a couple ways to capture statistics on your podcast, on your blog, on what you're doing. There's the internal option. So maybe you're using something like WordPress, which I'll show you, or maybe you've got a web server that has like a log file that you can download, and you can take that stuff and look at it, examine it, use other programs to do heuristics on it, and figure out what your stats are. The external option, I'm a big fan of the external options, so you're not going to hear me talk about anything internal beyond the application level. I'm not going to talk about web server stats because I don't know enough about them to even be that guy. So the external option is using things like Google Analytics, which is really good, and Google searches, which I had shown you as well, as ways to get some kind of stats value. Because there are 2 types of stats. There's stats data and there's stats values. So you can get stats data, like all these people are looking at your stuff. But what's the value in that? Who can, like, you get 80 people one day and you get 5 people the other day, and you don't understand the value of those stats. It's data. It's when you start doing these kind of heuristic, like when you start looking at stats over time, or maybe where that traffic's coming from, you start to see the value of the stats you're seeing, and it shows up. Yeah, we'll get to that. So and it shows up. So what happens is, as you see the stats going up and down, and you go and kind of dig into it, you realize, hey, maybe some of these are posts that I did on XYZ that I did, some kind of meta tagging or data, some kind of valuation to it, and people are searching for it. And where are they searching from? Oh, maybe they're coming from Google, blah, 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 all that stuff. So it's well worth taking the time to do it. If you're looking for server stats, talk to your host, because I don't know. There's lots of stuff to do it. But let's talk about so internal stuff, like, you're looking for your log files, go talk to your host. If you're looking for external options, here are the top ones I would highly suggest. There's Google Analytics, as I mentioned, and Google Alerts. Technorati is another really good source, and I'll get into that in a little bit. IceRocket, if you have never heard of IceRocket, use IceRocket. It's a search engine in blogs. It only looks at blogs. It looks in the content of blogs. It's not like Google, which has everything. It's just what people are writing about, which is cool. And then, of course, there's media stats sites like, you can use TubeMogul if you're doing a video podcast, or if you're using Blueberry has stats. If you're using some of the other aggregator sites, they also have stats as well. So, yeah.
FeedBurner.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get to FeedBurner. And FeedBurner, yeah, that's another one. So you got your stats now. So we'll talk about stats. So you get your stats. You're starting to figure out, okay, you got the data. How do you turn the value into it? And what do you do with that value? So, of course, you're going to try and find out what people are looking at. And then you can use that all as a baseline to understand maybe what you want to write in the future, maybe different sites you might want to partner with, or other sites that you think are interesting, that you've discovered or discovering your content, and maybe come up with a relationship of some sort. So here's the thing, the hard part with stats that happened to me, and it will happen to all of you guys, you'll probably focus on the data and not on the value. Pick the right stats to look at. If you use Twitter, like many of you do, and you go on Twitter one day and you say, hey, I just wrote a blog post about, the fact that Toronto has a great electronic music scene, and you post it to Twitter, and that one day you get tons of links and lots of people checking your stuff, and you're like, all right, that's data that shows people are looking at it. But then after that day, you don't get any more traffic. Maybe that's not the right kind of stat to focus on, and instead of doing that, look at what's the greater picture with that content. What kind of content are people looking at? And it's useful as a way to confirm what you're doing. Like if you already have a campaign for promoting your podcast, or if you already are doing content and you think it's valuable, it's a good second opinion. Yeah, people are into this, or not. They're not into it. Yeah.
There's a book, actually, Avinash Kaushik, Web Analytics in Our Day, and if you really want to geek out on this stuff, it's the book to read on it. And Avinash has a lot of great lines. There's one line in it which is, no matter how hard you torture the data, it can't tell you why people are doing things.
Yeah.
You can see what they're doing, but never jump to assumption as to why, unless you can see it.
Yeah, unless it's, and that's the thing with stats.
You can look him up on YouTube too. He speaks at Google.
Yeah.
There's some great sessions and TED Talks and stuff.
Okay, so this is going to be the kind of interactive portion. I'm just going to do a quick little what I do thing. This is silly but fun. So here's my podcast, or here's my website, and of course it's just the website, whatever. The first thing I do, which I've shown you guys, is I do the link. So every week I go and I type this in. I actually have a Google alert that tells me every week, and it gives me an idea of what people who are linking back to my site. I saw this morning, and I was like, what the huh? So I went and did all that. And it was perfect. You got to, it sounds crazy. I couldn't have picked a better day to do this. So that just happened, 20 hours ago. 20 hours ago, someone linked to me from Torrent Freak. I'm like, what the hell? I've arrived. And so then the first thing I did is I went to Google Analytics, and then so my stats are not very good. I get maybe 50 people a day. But in the end here, I got 114. Wow, that's awesome. So then the next thing I did is I go into the map overlay. And this is why Google Analytics is really good. If you start doing campaigns and experiments, I do a lot of I go to message boards. I love message boards. So one week I'll be like, oh, let me go see what people who like music, because my podcast is about music. Let me see what people who like music in the UK are all into. And I'll go on to like Alexia, or I'll go on to some sites, I'll do some searches, and find just music-based message boards. And I'll go and I'll just interact and get to know them. I'll get an account, I'll link back to my site, I'll do all that stuff, and see what's going on. And if the conversation makes sense, and they're doing stuff that I'm into, and I think they'll be into what I'm doing, I'll start just randomly peppering them with links back to content that I've already got on my blog. And then over time, I get to see where the traffic comes from. And like here you see like a lot of states, but over here like there's a little bit of action there. You know, we go over to the, I got like in the last month I've got 92 people from over there who look, which considering if we go back another, like if you take the time to go back another 6 months, that might have been maybe 12. Whatever. So for a small blog, I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. And then, so I'll spend time doing that. Of course, FeedBurner is awesome. I used to do all my feeds directly off my site. Then I realized that the FeedBurner actually gives metrics, very detailed metrics. So I moved, I'm still in the process of doing it because I haven't done it all, but I moved my feed off my site and into FeedBurner, at least my basic feed. And I can see when people are joining in and leaving and all that wonderful stuff. And even though, like, we're not talking big numbers, we're talking about 6 people. But it's better than nothing.
Another cool thing about FeedBurner is you can see what readers people are using. So if you see a whole bunch of people are using iTunes, like for instance, some people are like, I wonder if I should do iTunes chapterizing, right? And if you see a whole bunch of people are subscribed to you using iTunes, it might be an incentive to do that or not do that. There's not that. So you can learn a little from that too.
I really need to tell you guys something. From FeedBurner, exactly this.
Yes.
Start Cooking, which does very well in subscribers in general. We have used that method several times to find these random people, random sites where there are tens of thousands of visits, hundreds of thousands of visits, and we got like maybe 20 subscribers. We look at it, we're like, oh, that's not so bad. Maybe we should look at whether or not we can get featured on these sites that nobody pays attention to.
Exactly.
Next thing we know, 100 subscribers a day coming to our site, subscribing to the show.
Yeah.
We have 20,000 subscribers from various channels now because of these methods that we use, finding out on FeedBurner.
Yeah.
Do this.
I was also going to mention with FeedBurner, another great thing about it too is it changes your regular RSS feed address to a FeedBurner address. And what is great about that is if your host dies, you can go into FeedBurner and redirect that feed.
Yeah.
So anyone that's subscribed to that feed, it'll take you to your backup site or wherever you want to host things. So it's a great way that way too, which I've had to do.
Yeah. If you want to go, if your site goes down for any period of time, anywhere that it's cached is good, and FeedBurner is an amazing solution. And so I'm going to show you to a similar degree of what Julian was talking about. Now, I'm a big fan of WordPress, and I'm a big fan of WordPress for this simple thing. WordPress has a very clear and easy statistics engine on it. And again, full disclosure, I'm a small blog. I do nothing cool. I'm not trying to do it. I just write about what I think is really neat. So in the last 24 hours, I went from my average, which is about 70 users, to over 150 views. And then if you scroll down, it tells me a couple of really good things, which is, again, why I love WordPress. It tells me that Torrent Freak sent me 73 people. And what they looked at was, hey, content producers, get into the peer-to-peer cloud, which is a blog post I wrote a while ago, getting ready for PodCamp, which is kind of priming me. And also, it gives me an idea of all the different places. Filter27, I didn't know what Filter27 was about 4 months ago, and I'd written something about the Internet Archive as being a great place to host your music. If you don't have money for hosting and you don't want to do anything, you just want to put it online, and say, oh, put it on the Internet Archive. So Filter27 somehow found my post, and they wrote about it, and then I discovered them from this, and then started going and reading their blog all the time. And they write about stuff that I'm really into, so I started commenting on their blog. Suddenly their people are commenting on my blog, and it grew a little. Like, things grew a little. I don't know how to understand it, but it grew a little. So I thought that was cool. And this, I regularly kind of pay attention to this, because it gives me an idea of where people are coming in, and what they're looking at. And this is good for people who write content or have podcasts or whatever, because it lets you know, maybe I should write more about this. Or maybe I should do more on why I think the TR909 is amazing. Because if I click on that, I notice that over time, well, not here, but over time, one person every day at least looks at that compared to something else that has none. And if I go back, so like, say this one here. I mean, this is like an extreme example, but like imagine, you got dips and valleys, and you're seeing like, oh, over time people are really getting into this. Then you get an idea of what you might want to write about, because with podcasting and blogging and all that, people don't really respond. Some people do. Some people are really into commenting and responding, but generally, your only clue as to what you're doing and if it matters is if it's in here, and I like that. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Are you hosted on WordPress.com?
No, I host this on my own server.
And how did you get those stats in?
When you host it on your own server, but you register it with WordPress.com, it gives you an API key, and that API key, along with a plugin called the Blog Stats plugin from WordPress, will give you all this.
Excellent.
And before this, I used to do a lot of this work in the Google Analytics. Like I would sit there and troll through it for hours trying to find shit. And now I just go to here and I'm like, oh, it gives me more than enough to kind of get a start.
So you have your own domain and you're registered with WordPress, so therefore you get the stats.
Yes. And there's one other part that's really critical that, again, and I'm not doing this because I'm a fan of WordPress, I'm doing it because it fucking works, is these clicks are the coolest thing in the world. No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to swear, but I'm really excited about it. These clicks are the coolest thing in the world. And you don't really get that in a lot of ways. So I generally, when I write a post, I don't just write. I take keywords that I think are important and I reference links to those things. And it helped me over time discover things that are worth clicking to and including, because people go and click on them. And I didn't know that before. It was one of the things that was totally new to me. So then I started doing that. Like, it's good to know the search terms people are searching for, but what you put on your site and people click on and keep looking for is just as critical as what they're finding. Because you become part of their click stream, and if you have valuable clicks, generally they come back and look for you for more information. Yes?
I'm sorry, do you mean the clicks to other articles with those subjects on your blog, or
No.
other articles
Don't you mean
On the internet.
Don't you mean like hypertext links within your post?
Yes.
Saying, if you want to hear more about this or read more about this, here's where to go. Or I reference this talk because of here, hypertext link.
You can do. There's several ways you can do it. I'm just going to show you how I do it using the PodCamp example. So I wrote, say I'm getting ready for PodCamp. I talked about it's an unconference, so I clicked to the general description of what PodCamp is, and then I did PodCamp Toronto, the media archive from last year, where it is, Rogers Communication, the map, the session schedule, the registration page. Like I just, it's stuff I'm writing, and then I write my blog post, and I go back and I go, well, maybe I can send some traffic. If someone's interested in this post, they may be interested in these links. But there's no like definite way to do it, and this is kind of something I have been doing and I'm comfortable doing.
Is that a wiki page?
No, this is just my blog.
I've done the same thing with some of my podcasts. Occasionally, if in my description of my shows, I'm putting a hypertext link to something that I've talked about. I did a podcast and I commented on the podcast about somebody getting fired from an internet gaming site. And I put a link to that person's blog page in my post, so if you wanted to know more about this person, you can go here.
Yeah.
As a way of informing people.
Yeah, sorry.
And I just want to tie this back strategically to something that you showed earlier, where you discovered in looking at your stats a site that had been linking to you that you didn't previously know about. And I always like to sell people on this. The value of linking from your site is that somebody on the other side might go, "Hey, Virgil's pushing traffic to me. I'm gonna push some back." Or I'm gonna, somebody might discover Virgil's blog because Virgil drove some traffic to them, right? And people get weird about links in blogs, and I find this lately. We were just talking about this. It's like some blogs don't have any links in it because people are afraid of losing traffic off their site. But if you can drive somebody to something cool, not only are they going to think, hey, Virgil found something cool, and it's cool that he linked to it, but if you drive enough traffic to somebody else, they might get interested in you the way you found that.
Yeah, like Filter 27. I didn't know who they were, and I was like...
and now you guys have a relationship because of them driving some traffic to you in the first place.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a reason to link.
Yes.
There's an opportunity when you link, when people see that you've linked, hey, now that's how I found Last FM actually. The first time I came up in a Google alert, the first time somebody listened to an Uncle Seth tune, and then I saw Last FM, and God knows I've driven a lot of traffic to Last FM since then because I'm always talking about it.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite. It sounds horrible. It's like one of my favorite sections. Yeah. And just to give you an idea, imagine here is a video podcast. For whatever reason, the plugin doesn't work right now. It's weird. My blog's like that. But that's all the story. So here's a video. Imagine there's a video here, and then below I've got the show notes kind of on that video. And like in this case, there was a session or there was a gallery thing on the evolution of electronic music through the hardware. And I was like, oh, I think that's cool. So I did my little podcast and talked about it. And then I linked to all the things that were involved. The fact that it was at Beats, Breaks, and Culture and Play D, and some, like Leo Thurman, who invented the first electronic kind of instrument thing. And just so people who might watch the show and discover it through a web Google search, through anything here, they might Google search for, EDM hardware or visual history or they might look for Leo Thurman. I try to do the SEO-friendly thing already. So I try and label it and title it so that it makes sense that if people are Googling for that stuff, they might happen to land here. Yeah. And then if they happen to land here, I try to continue the conversation for them so they can find more stuff that might help them in their clickstream, whatever they're looking for.
Exactly. When I put PodSafe music in my show, I printed the artist and the song, and I make sure that in the show notes is a hypertext link to the site that I pulled the music from.
Yeah.
If they want to know more, they want to listen to one music, one click, there they go.
Yeah, there they go. Exactly. And to further that along, Ice Rocket, which is a great site if you're not familiar with it, it's worth learning about. If you go in Ice Rocket, you can search through blogs, just put in your blog URL, see what shows up. And if nothing shows up here, that's fine. If something shows up there, that's even cooler. Because if stuff shows up, these are people who are blogging about whatever you're doing. And you don't even have to put your blog name or your URL or anything. Topics that you might think are interesting, that you might want to tie into your show or your blog or whatever you're doing, put that stuff there and see what other bloggers are saying about that topic. Yes?
If you are doing the same thing, I use Google Alerts.
Yeah, I got that. I got that on.
Whenever somebody uses types in your name, they're not always linking to you either. So one of the things that I personally find useful is I'm like, this person is talking about me on a blog post, but they didn't link to me. I'll be like, oh, and I'll shoot them an email. I'll be like, can you just add a link to my site? That would be really
or send a comment saying something.
As you're trying to build up your site and the amount of links to it, and so to kind of
it's SEO friendly.
Then every link counts, and so putting the extra effort into finding out where those people are talking about you but not linking can help you help.
Yeah, and Ice Rock is great for that. Yeah.
And even commenting on, because some people maybe talking about you, and if you leave a comment, I know people, they're like, wow, you took the time to comment on my blog, and they admire you so much more for that, and then they'll talk about you in the future, maybe even link to you.
Yeah, and that it sounds crazy to say every bit of traffic I've gotten on my site is because I spend so much time going to other sites and reading stuff that I think is cool and commenting where appropriate, and we start bantering back and forth. Which is really cool.
Really quick, have you used Podsinger?
Podsinger I haven't used.
Podsinger actually is badass. They changed the name, but podsinger.com will redirect to it. And what it is, it searches through transcripts that are auto-generated.
Okay.
And it'll find your name or your podcast or whatever. So if you do a search in Podsinger, it'll find other podcasters talking about you. It'll find that and videos.
Oh, cool.
No. It's badass. I don't know how it works. But it works really well. Got to remember too, like spell your name differently. If somebody might, like Julian, for example, might want to spell it with an AN just to see, because it's an auto transcription. So if your name, play with your name a little bit, or the name of your brand, or whatever.
Yeah, whatever you're looking for. So and then of course the last thing, my little bit of closing before I don't know what else I could talk about is if you're not aware of Google Alerts, try it. Fuck around with it, play with it, get to know it, put in different terms on anything, your name, your show, stuff you're into, whatever. Do it and experiment with it, because this is the best way to find out what people are talking about and when they're talking about you. Now, to close this all up, if you start doing this stuff, you'll start seeing trends in your traffic. And that's one of the things that, back here, that's one of the things that makes this now kind of valuable. Because I noticed when I post posts that are interesting about electronic music, and especially for artists on how to get their stuff online and how to get new markets or new audiences, all of a sudden, you know, it makes sense that when I get something about, you know, recommendations, it makes sense to post this because I know people who come to my site are starting to look for that kind of content. Or, you know, I mean, I renovated my kitchen, but that's something. It's still a blog, I gotta admit. You know, like, you know, when I did this, I didn't write this thinking I was gonna get referenced by Torrent Freak or by Mini Nova. I wrote this because I was like, I make music, I want to get it on the internet, and maybe some other people want to get on the internet too, so let me write something about it. So I took a couple of minutes, and I talked about my discovery and what I found, and, you know, I put things that I thought were important, and then all of a sudden I got, you know, I'm getting like link backs. It comes up. You know, I'm getting link backs from Torrent Freak, which is totally random, and you know, like ID blog, like Torrent. I don't know who these people are, but they're starting to link to it because I'm writing about stuff that I noticed in the trend of people on my blog. The content that people were looking for was that kind of content. So I started writing more, and I started podcasting more about it. Yeah.
I just want to pop in a couple tools before we let out. It's all about both social proof and statistical proof. You want to have at least like blog catalog or my blog going, show some faces, show what kind of people are visiting your site. And those also provide some watered down statistical tools. But also you want to have something like Site Meter on your site. Like if you look at ProBlogger.net, that whole network, Darren Rose stuff, and like Tree Hugger, tons of blogs. The trend is slapping a Site Meter button on the site so that other people can see what your traffic is like. That if you're actually interested in monetizing at any point, you want to be able to build up that history so that people can pop in and see, yeah, this is something I want to advertise on or whatever. Also, Alexa. Install the Alexa plugin. Even if you don't get a lot of traffic to your site, just by you visiting your site bumps your stats up, and that's going to matter too in the long run.
Yeah, and it's worth also saying, like, you can capture all that stuff. You don't have to put it on your site. You don't have to reveal it. Like, I have Alexa on my site just so I can get an idea of what's going on. You don't have to share it with the world, but you have to recognize that there is value in knowing that kind of stuff because it can help you really hyper-focus on what you like doing because you're posting about it and what people are looking for on the net. And there, you know, the whole other conversation is about meta tagging and SEO-friendly content and figuring out all that stuff. That's a whole other conversation. This is just once you've got something you like, how to figure out if it still matters, if it's relevant.
Just one comment, Alexa. Compete.com is going to be
Compete's awesome.
it's going to beat Alexa in a couple of years. Alexa will be dead.
Compete's really good.
So make sure you're on that as well.
Okay, good to know.
Right.
So there you go.